There is a specific kind of man that people cannot explain. He is not the loudest in the room. He is not the most talented, the most gifted, or the most naturally blessed. But every single time you look up, he is still there, still moving, still building, still executing. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing when it began, the people around him start to feel something uncomfortable. Not quite fear, not quite admiration. Something in between, something heavier. This video is not about motivation. Motivation is a drug. It floods your system when the music hits right, when the speech lands perfectly, when the idea first sparks, and then it disappears, just like every other high, leaving you exactly where you started. Maybe worse, because now you feel the gap between who you imagined you would become and who you still are. Motivation fades, emotion shifts, life interrupts. But consistency doesn't need any of that. Consistency is the philosophy of the man who decided once and never needed to decide again. Today we're going to talk about that man, and by the end, you will understand why becoming him is the most dangerous thing you can do in a world full of people who are always starting over. Think about what it actually feels like to be around someone who never breaks their standard. You have met this person, or at least glimpsed them from a distance. They train whether they feel like it or not. They do the work whether anyone is watching or not. They do not need an audience. They do not need a streak app, an accountability partner, or a perfect morning. They simply do the thing and then they do it again tomorrow. And there is something about that quality that makes ordinary people deeply uncomfortable, because it exposes a truth they would rather ignore. The reason most people fail is not lack of talent. It is not bad luck. It is not the economy or the timing or the wrong environment. It is the inability to remain the same person on Tuesday at 6 a.m. as they were on the Sunday when they made the plan. Consistency is identity, and most people have no idea who they are. Machiavelli understood this principle at its root. He wrote not about the men who burned brightest, but about the men who lasted. A prince who is unstable, who shifts his policies with his moods, who is generous today and withdrawn tomorrow, creates uncertainty in his kingdom. And uncertainty is a breeding ground for rebellion, for disrespect, for collapse. But the ruler who is the same today as he was 6 months ago, whose word means something because his actions confirm it over time, that man builds something no talent can: trust. Not the emotional kind, the structural kind, the kind that makes people say, without needing to think too hard, I know what he will do. I know where he stands, he cannot be shaken. That is what lethal constancy creates. It builds predictability in your excellence. And in a world where most people are perpetually unreliable, perpetually I was doing so well, but your unbroken consistency becomes a form of silent dominance that requires no announcement. Let us go deeper, because this is where most men misunderstand the concept. They hear the word consistency, and they think it means doing big things every day. They imagine the 4 a.m. wake-ups, the 2-hour workouts, the cold showers, the journaling, the reading, the meal prep, the full military routine executed without deviation. And then, when life arrives, when they miss a session, or eat the wrong meal, or skip the reading, they interpret that single break as a collapse of identity. They say, I lost my streak. They say, I have to start over. They treat consistency as a performance rather than a foundation. This is not consistency. This is theater. Real consistency is not a performance for others. It is a contract with yourself. And the content of that contract is not, I will do everything perfectly every day. The content of the contract is, I will not abandon myself when the conditions are difficult. Musashi spent years wandering Japan alone, sleeping in temples and caves, owning almost nothing, fighting when challenged, studying when not. There was no applause, no crowd, no content creator documenting his discipline. Just the man, the practice, and the unbroken commitment to become something that had never existed before. He did not need the conditions to be right. He was the condition. This is the first shift you must make. Stop waiting for the right moment, the right energy, the right environment. Stop building elaborate systems that collapse the moment one variable changes. Instead, ask yourself one question. What is the non-negotiable? Not the full routine. The one thing that cannot be skipped without compromise. The one action that, when done, signals to you that you are still the man you decided to be. For some, it is the training. For others, it is the study. For others, it is the silence in the morning before the world takes over. Find the non-negotiable, protect it with absolute ruthlessness, and build everything else around it. because the man with one unbroken commitment is far more powerful than the man with 20 habits he follows when convenient. Now let us talk about what consistency actually costs, because this is the part they never tell you. The motivational content online shows you the highlight, the early morning, the discipline shot, the transformation. What they do not show you is the Tuesday night when you're exhausted from a full day and nothing went right, and everything in you wants to sleep and not do the thing. What they do not show you is the 3 months of work with no visible result, when you are doing everything right and the mirror has not changed, and your bank account has not changed, and no one has noticed. What they do not show you is the loneliness of the path, the way people slowly drift away when your standards rise, when you stop going out every weekend, when your conversations shift toward what you are building and away from what you are watching. This is the real price, not the physical discomfort, the isolation, the invisible months, the social cost of becoming the man who never breaks. Most people are not willing to pay this. They reach the invisible period, the months where the work is real but the results are not yet visible, and they interpret the silence as evidence that it is not working. They pivot, they restart with a new method, they try something else. And so they are always beginning again, always in the first phase, never in the compound phase, never in the place where consistency begins to multiply itself in ways that look, from the outside, like sudden talent. The Japanese have a concept that applies here: Kaizen, continuous improvement through small daily deliberate refinement, not revolution, evolution. The bamboo tree spends its first 4 years growing a root system underground. You see nothing. You water it and nothing happens. You tend to it and nothing appears. And then in the 5th year it shoots up 90 feet in 6 weeks. The world looks at the bamboo and calls it a miracle. The bamboo knows it was 4 years of invisible work. Your consistency is the root system. The results are the bamboo. And you cannot rush the roots by deciding you need to see growth faster. There is a psychological dimension to this that goes beyond habit and routine. When you become the man who does not break his word to himself, something changes in how you perceive yourself at the level of identity. Self-trust is one of the rarest commodities in the modern world. Most people do not trust themselves because they have evidence accumulated over years that they cannot be relied upon when things get hard. They told themselves they would wake up early and did not. They told themselves they would stop the habit and did not. They told themselves this time would be different and it was not, so they build their lives with a constant undercurrent of quiet self-contempt, a background noise that says, "You will probably not follow through." And this noise is not pessimism, it is pattern recognition. It is the honest evaluation of a track record. The only way to rebuild self-trust is through evidence, not through affirmations, not through visualization. Evidence. Repeated, boring, unglamorous evidence that when you say you will do a thing, the thing gets done. This is why the non-negotiable matters so much in the beginning. It is not just a habit, it is a proof of concept. Every time you do the thing when you did not want to, you deposit into the account of self-trust. Every time you break the commitment, you withdraw. And most people are bankrupt in this account while pretending otherwise. The man with a full account of self-trust moves differently. He does not need external validation because he already has internal confirmation. He does not spiral when someone criticizes him because his identity is not built on their opinion. It is built on what he has proven to himself in private. He does not seek permission because he does not need approval from people whose consistency cannot match his own. He has become, in the truest sense, sovereign, and that sovereignty is visible. You cannot always name it when you encounter it in another person, but you feel it. There is a groundedness, a stillness, a settled quality in the man who has kept his word to himself for long enough that it is no longer effort. It has become character. Let us address the social dynamic directly, because this is where most men underestimate the impact of their consistency. When you stop being one of the ones who starts and stops, who talks and does not follow through, who posts the motivation and lives the contradiction, you become different from the crowd in a way that the crowd cannot ignore. At first they laugh, then they wait for you to quit, then they go quiet, then they start watching. And eventually the ones who laugh the loudest either disappear from your life or begin trying to replicate what you are doing. The criticism never stops. But it changes shape. In the beginning it is mockery. In the middle it is doubt. At the end it is explanation. They tell people they always knew you would make it. Do not mistake this for validation. The point is not to be admired. The point is that your consistency creates an undeniable reality that others must respond to, whether they want to or not. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about the power of appearing strong, because the appearance is sustained by substance. Anyone can look impressive for a week. No one can fake a year of unbroken execution. The time itself becomes your proof, and no one can argue with time. Now hear this clearly, because this is the part that will determine whether you walk away from this video and do something or whether you walk away and think about doing something. Consistency is not a waiting strategy. You do not become consistent and then wait for the universe to reward your patience. Consistency is aggressive. It is the daily application of pressure on your targets, your weaknesses, your craft. Musashi did not meditate and wait for mastery to arrive. He fought, studied, refined, fought again, studied again. The consistency was in the application of force, not in the passive endurance of time. So when you build your non-negotiable, when you protect the one thing that defines your standard, make sure it is pointed at something real, a skill you are sharpening, a body you are building. A mind you are expanding, a life you are constructing. Consistency without direction is just ritual without purpose. The man who is consistently mediocre is still mediocre. The weapon must be aimed. One final thing. The man who never stops does not make announcements. He does not post about his consistency. He does not tell people about his streak. He does not need witnesses for his standard, because the standard is not for their eyes. It exists between him and the person he is becoming. And the person he is becoming is not the person who started. He is harder, quieter, more certain, more difficult to move. The world has thrown its tests, and he has not broken. The weeks have passed, and he has not deviated. The people have doubted, and he has not stopped. And now he is something different. Not because of one good day, because of the accumulation of days that almost no one saw, because of the mornings no one witnessed. Because of the work done in silence when every reason to stop was present, and he chose the work anyway. That is lethal constancy, not the loudness of ambition, but the quiet, relentless, unbreakable execution that makes eventual results not just likely, but inevitable. And when those results arrive, you will not be surprised. You were always coming. You never stopped moving. And now, they finally see what you always knew. If this struck something deep, if it felt less like motivation and more like recognition, then you already understand. Leave a comment below. I am still moving. Not for the algorithm. As a declaration. A quiet, unshakable commitment between you and the version of yourself that refuses to quit. This channel exists for those who do not need to be convinced, only reminded.